Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast. Today, we are going to talk about different school of thoughts through philosophy. So, what's the topic, Jamie?
So, we're covering the Enlightenment era, which is considered to be the 18th, 19th, 20th century, but we may go further back in time, talking about traditional ideas of philosophy, maybe going back to the Greeks or going back to India or ancient China. And what I'm interested in, and something that we're going to unpick a lot today, is how reason and logic became the substitute in this modern world. Nowadays, we rely on these things to rationalize our experiences, whereas in the past, for thousands of years, us humans, we would have used religion and superstition. So, basically, the 19th century saw the rise of elitists who came up with these philosophies, but they were not like the philosophies of the past, which were dictated by a specific group. There was a wide range of them appearing in Europe, and I want to know, why did this happen specifically in Europe, and if their origins link to other aspects. And I know you want to speak about how our school of thoughts work, basically.
Yeah. So my interest in philosophy is not to basically try to answer the questions that I have about life through philosophy, or try to adopt one philosophy or multiple philosophies and live my life according to that. My interest in philosophy is basically I want to read and see how one question can be questioned even more. Because philosophy is not about finding answers for the questions that you have about life or about different settings or different things. It doesn't solve your life problem. It doesn't give you a political vertebrate that you can lean on and then start your things from there. Basically, what philosophy does is it teaches you ways to think and critically think. So that is what I'm more interested in philosophy.
So why do you think people are so closed and cold when it comes to philosophy?
It's basically very difficult to read.
Yeah.
Philosophy is very difficult to read. Like I don't want to pretend here and say that I have read a lot of books. I have not. The way I learn philosophy is through videos, through basically different lectures that are given by people like Russel in Columbia University. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong. And there is one lecture from Duke University as well on different philosophies. So those are the ways I learn about philosophy. But it is also one streamlined way to learn. It is very compact, and they try to give you as much information as they can in a very short time manner. So it doesn't really help. But it helps you get you to introduce yourself with different philosophical ideas and different school of thoughts, like utilitarianism, Hegelian philosophy, Platonic philosophy, Socratic philosophy, Aristotelian philosophy, and all that, like all the big names you have ever heard.
Where should we start then?
I think we should start with the one that we can understand.
Should we start with...
I want to start with Bertrand Russell, if you don't mind.
Can you open up? Because I know you're an admirer.
Yeah.
And I know little about Bertrand Russell, if I'm honest.
So Bertrand Russell is not only a philosopher, he was also a mathematician. He was one of the best mathematicians who proved, I think he proved 1 = 1 or 1 + 1 = 2. So he's that philosopher who did that. He did that with the help of another philosopher called Wittgenstein. And... correct if I'm wrong in this one, because I might be wrong. He was one of the first philosophers that I ever heard of and that I ever read about, because you can still find his interviews if you look in YouTube, or if you look into those documentary archives, and hear him talk about different ideas, hear him talk about why he's not a Christian anymore, or also talk about his views on World War I and World War II. He's the one who basically says that World War I was option, World War II was not option. So basically, so that's what he says. And there are other stuff that he talks about. Basically, there is a book called Skeptical Essays by Bertrand Russell, and that's the book that I've read, actually, the one philosophical book that I've read. And in that book, he mostly talks about... It's not entirely about being skeptic. It's also about being rational. It's also about questioning your authority. It's also about using your common sense, and where using common sense actually works and where it doesn't. And same with rational.
What does that mean? That's interesting. Where common sense doesn't work.
Well, basically, you use common sense when you are judging something. The first instinct that comes to your head is most of the time basically...
Prejudice, is that what you're going to say?
It could be prejudice.
Okay.
And that could be commonsensical to you, but it's not commonsensical to everybody.
I see.
And these days, we see people not use their common sense. And that's the problem. And it was problem throughout 19th and 20th century. Like, people were not using their common sense anymore. Yeah. We're trying to make things more complex than they already are. Like, when let's imagine a scenario where I'm with a friend, and my friend wants to pay for the dinner, and I don't want my friend to pay for her dinner, and at the end my friend might have paid for the dinner. I'll go home and see, oh, why did I let my friend pay for the dinner? Like, what would my friend think? Or would my friend think that I'm poor? Would my friend think that this and that? So common sense tells you, well, it happened, stop thinking about it. It's a bit stoic, but not exactly stoic. But common sense tells you, okay, what was the situation, and how did your friend happen to pay for the food rather than you paying for your food?
Yeah.
So that is the kind of things that he tries to say in those things. It's very deep.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, the thing is, you like to hone in on specific examples and how they reflect character, I think.
Yeah.
I like to look at the broader themes. So for me, I would be thinking, why does Bertrand Russell think that way? What was the context? Where did he grow up? He grew up in England,
He grew up in England, in very wealthy family.
Well,
like very wealthy family, well-to-do off with family. He had a very flashy life, like a life of as that of a celebrity. Like there are some controversies in his life as well, like the things he did. Apparently, he slept with his friend's wife when he was working with his friends in his friend's house. So there are things like that. He was a very liberal person, and he was very articulated. Like, I have never heard anyone other than Stephen Fry.
I knew you were going to say Stephen Fry. He was going to say Stephen Fry.
Oh, Stephen Fry is a very articulated person. So yeah, and basically,
he's a smart guy.
Yeah, so basically he had lived a life in limelight as well, and there were people who would listen to him because he was a very good intellectual human being, and he was a very well-spoken human being that made him quite famous to other people, because when he spoke something you could understand. But
then he did have that privilege,
Well, that was not his fault that he had the privilege. So, but from that privilege, he gives something to the world. We see so many times that people who are born with silver spoon, they die without doing anything significant to their life. Point. Yeah. So we can at least give him that, the benefit of doubt that he actually did something with his.
For his fellow man.
He was not doing it because he wanted to help other people. He did it because he wanted to do it for the sake of doing it. But that contributed quite a lot to our humanity and the way of thinking as well at the time. The one thing that he really talks about is being dogmatic and having having intellectual humility. Because even though he was really, really talented, like a really, really intellect person, he believed that those people who are intellectual, they should have humility a bit. Because what he says in his book is like the essence of liberal outlook lies not in what opinions are held, but how the opinions are held. Instead of being held dogmatically, they are held tentatively and with consciousness that a new evidence may arise at any moment that will lead to their abandonment. So basically... So he was a liberal. I think people will get that by reading his book, his Skeptical Essays and all that. But he says that liberalism is not about opposing conservatism.
Yeah.
And similarly, conservatism is not about preserving everything that is how it is. Basically, what both of these ideas are trying to do is like they're trying to preserve that is good and bring change to things that need change to be brought.
Yeah.
But we see the opposite of that happening in the world right now. It's like... Well, if you're conservative, you're exactly conservative, like very strictly conservative. You want to preserve everything as they are. You don't want to do any changes. You don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
That is conservatism. And liberalism is like, oh, you want to change everything again and again and again. Like, it's not because the changes are brought about at every moment. That's not the reason. The reason is like liberalism these days gets very bad reputation because they try to be nice to everybody. They try to be accommodative to everybody. Because these days, there are only two schools of thoughts. One is liberalism or conservatism. Even in politics and in thinking. Far left or far right. Even center is like center left or center right. No one is in the center anymore.
Yeah.
And Russell is like, well, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
That's not what we're supposed to do.
Well, this reminds me of Hegel, who says that people need to find the balance between the individual and the society. So that's like... what we need is something more ambiguous. You know, we shouldn't be so focused on ourselves, and we shouldn't be so focused on the world.
Yeah.
Similarly, we shouldn't be so focused on tradition and conservatism, and we shouldn't be too focused on like liberal and change. Like,
yeah.
It's difficult philosophy because you're not. Let's say you call yourself a liberal. You're probably not a liberal all the time. Like if you're in a court case, you know, and you're reading the legal terms, you're not going to read that with a skeptical mind. Like, you're not going to be going, "Oh, I don't know about that." You know, you're going to probably have very conservative attitudes about how courts should be and how things should run.
Yeah, there are certain institutions where I don't think change need to be brought. Actually, it's like progress doesn't mean good. For every time. Every time when a progressive movement happens doesn't mean it's going to bring something good to humanity, does it?
No.
Like,
it could be good, but
it could be, but you can't necessarily say it's good. Like, we can say progress in technology has brought very good things in like life of many people, but we can also argue that it has taken life out of people in many situations as well. Like, we are not in front of we're not in a table during dinner time with our family eating food without looking at anything.
Yeah.
We're either in our room looking at a phone, looking at a device, looking at a screen basically. Like, parents are doing that and kids are doing that. Everyone is in their own world. There is no conversation happening.
I wonder if the internet's caused more connection or more disconnection, because it's definitely done a lot of both, you can argue, right?
Connection, definitely, because without internet, there are many things that happen in my life or in your life that would not have happened, like with friends and everything.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it has taken us away from that dining table where the talk was supposed to happen.
Right.
I do understand the fact that many people don't have they are not fortunate enough, like even us, we're not fortunate enough to have like a bloody dining table and have everything in that and like have a deep conversation with the parents, because it's not every time that your parents want to have deep conversation. It's
True.
not that you want to have deep conversation every time, because many people don't have fireplace and their parents don't drink wine in their front of fireplace for some absurd reason.
There might not be time or convenience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there are other things that impact our life, and when you look at in terms of philosophical way, you can make it very beautiful, saying, in terms of philosophy, it is good that you don't get free time for yourself because we don't have free will anyway. So what are you going to do with your free time? Yeah? Or you are a nihilistic person, you'll be like, well, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Like, free time doesn't matter. Lot busy doesn't matter.
So what
Nothing is going to
I wonder, what is the appeal of nihilism? Like, why does nihilism exist? Maybe it's like, with great responsibility, how does that phrase go?
With great responsibility. No, with great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly. So if you have no responsibility, you
have no power.
No power.
Well, I mean, you don't want a nihilistic person to be prime minister or president of your country, period, because they're going to start war. And they will not care if your country...
Would they start war, or would they just like turn to selfish, like trying to import goods? Like, there's an anarchist party in the south of Mexico called the Zapatista, and they're just... Well, they are an anarchist society, so they free roam. They've got no law and order. You could argue that's a nihilist society.
Well, a nihilist, I'm not really sure about that because I haven't done the research on that. But on nihilism, what I know about nihilism is basically there is no meaning for anything. There is no meaning of life. So nothing has meaning, basically. Right. So you doing right thing or the wrong thing doesn't matter because there is no meaning behind it. There is no reason behind it.
So can you put this into your trolley situation?
So but we will get back to we have given with the help of our lovely virtual assistant AI. What I did was, like, basically I went to try to give one scenario to different school of thoughts and see how different school of thought would try to tackle that problem. And now, because we have already into nihilism, I can talk about that in nihilism, because for that we'll go into detail more, and we'll talk about the Hegelian philosophy, the Kantian philosophy, the utilitarianism, and all that. So nihilism, the theme of nihilism is that life has no inherent meaning, and moral values are arbitrary or non-existent. Yeah. So in the trolley problem, which is basically there is a train coming to a track, and there are a few people lying on the train track, and they are ambivalent that a train is coming towards them. So if you don't let them know that there is a train coming, they would not know, and they would get crushed by a train. Yeah. But there is a detour for that train, and what you have to do is like pull the lever, and the train would go onto that detour, saving those 4 people. But on that detour path, there is one very innocent person who doesn't know they are in a train track, or like completely like away from the train track and everything that has to do with the train or the trolley or whatever we call it. So if we were to give that, if we were to solve that problem, what were you supposed to do? Like, you are the person, would you go and let those 4 people know and let that one person die? Yeah, because you have to do something. You have to either pull the lever or not pull the lever.
If you don't pull it, 4 people?
4 people die.
But did they know that the train was coming?
Well, we don't know. I think no, because if they knew, they could just jump off the. Isn't it the main thing?
So would you not pull the lever because you save more people than if you don't pull the lever?
So that's the thing. Different philosophical ideas or different school of thoughts will try to answer this question in their own way.
I think that sometimes philosophy goes out the window, and in that moment you are like your own philosophy, right?
Yeah.
And I suspect most people would do nothing, because it's easier to do nothing than to be an active part of a scenario.
Well, in this situation, if you do nothing, you're guilty of killing 4 people.
But then, if the police came, you can say, "Oh, I didn't know it was happening."
No. Let's not go into detail. Let's not try to make this problem modernized and say, "Okay, what if they had phone and I rang both of them at the same time?"
I think it would be cowardice. I think it would be cowardice, and most people would do nothing. That's what I suspect. Maybe I'm a bit cynical of people.
Oh, so if many people are coward in their own way, then maybe that would happen. But from nihilistic perspective, what would happen is like. There is no objective morality or inherent value in life.
So you kind of have to be a psychopath, really, to be a good nihilist, right? I imagine.
But there are certain philosophers who might not agree with being called them you're a psychopath, but maybe they are a psychopath. You know, there is no concrete way of judging someone's psychopathy. We can't medically say. Well, I think we can medically say this one is psychopath and someone is not. But because they are historical personas, I don't think we can go and like judge in certain way.
Villainizing them.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, a nihilistic person would not act into emotional impulses or pragmatic considerations. Yeah.
I made a comment here because Ujwal's written the list of different scenarios and explaining what people would do with these 2 train tracks, and I've just gone across it in red pen and gone, why this? And I want to know why.
So the nihilist, a person who is nihilist, they believe that there is no inherent meaning to life, and the moral values they don't exist.
So if they don't have any values, why do they act on impulse?
No, they don't act on impulse. They don't do anything.
Okay, but you said that they may act.
No,
why may they?
No,
act?
They may act. So they may act on emotional impulse rather than moral framework, because moral framework doesn't work. But emotional impulse might work. Like we all are human beings at the end of the day. Even if you're a nihilistic person who lives by yourself, you don't have no social contact, you don't have nothing. And you think there is no meaning to the life. You think that the moral values have they're non-existent, and you believe on all those things. But at least you are a human being, and you know how it feels when something crushes you. You know, like you know how it feels. You know how pain feels. You know how suffering feels. Yeah. So in terms of that, you might take a decision. But you might not do anything as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and because you don't care, because life has no meaning. 1 person dying is same as 4 person dying in that situation. So it doesn't matter if you pull the lever.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
so let's think of the opposite example. Someone who would be very, very determined to pull the lever.
Well, utilitarianism.
You think that's... Should we look at that?
So utilitarianism is basically doing the right action that maximizes the outcome. So what would you do to maximize the overall happiness and minimize the suffering?
Pull the lever, right?
You would pull the lever and kill one innocent person. But is it okay to kill one innocent person if you are a naturalist, which we'll get into it because some of our Eastern philosophers are naturalists. And if you're a naturalist, you would say, let the life go as it is going. Let it flow as it is flowing. Let the nature flow as it is flowing. So in that situation, the train is going on that path. Don't obstruct it. Don't do it.
So they're not really different to nihilists, you could argue in some way, the naturalists, because they're letting the same result happen.
Well, no, the naturalist... Naturalist is more of like saying, okay, this is happening with its own course. I'm no one to disturb it.
Is that not cowardice? No?
It could be. You can call it.
Maybe both of them are.
Yeah, I think it would be very... this is the problem with philosophy, isn't it?
It's very complex. Yeah. I knew we were going to run straight into many of these holes.
Yeah.
Because every argument in philosophy, it seems, has holes in it.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't make sense. Like, why does this happen, you know?
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm doing this, the reason I have brought you different school of thoughts in this introductory philosophy podcast is basically we are also learning. We don't know a lot about philosophies.
We'd like to know more.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I know many names, but I don't know what they actually stand for. And it's also basically like being jack of all trades, good of nothing, because you know Western, Eastern philosophy, philosophers, but not necessarily entirely one. Like you're not concretely focused on one philosopher, and that is what I don't want to do as well. I don't want to focus on one philosopher and one philosophy and basically try to base my life and base my thought and my belief around that.
I think that's wise, because you're not, like we said earlier, you're not the same person in every situation.
Exactly. So one philosophy does not answer all the questions for you. And imagine Socrates or imagine Diogenes. Imagine those philosophers, they were alive here now, and I have based my life according to Diogenes. I went and found a barrel, lived in a barrel. I was like basically pleasuring myself in front of a public without caring anything about a public.
You heard it here first.
Living with the dogs and all that kind of thing. So I was living like him, like I cared about myself. I cared about things. Like you know that, like I don't care about materialistic thing. I care about the spiritual thing maybe, or one.
Well, you might care about Diogenes, right? Because you're turning him into an idol.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I care about him, and I literally live like him, or I live my life according to the beliefs that he had.
Yeah.
And for example, you were like a Socrates. So basically, all right, I'm gonna ask questions to everyone and try them to answer their own questions. Basically, well, I mean that is one Socratic theory, but not entirely that. So imagine that, and if Socrates were to come here, and if Diogenes were to come here, I think they would think that it was the worst decision of their life to have that kind of philosophy and try to preach it or teach it to other people.
You think they'd be shocked to see it happen for other people?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they would be very ashamed seeing that.
That's interesting.
Because what they were trying to teach is you be yourself.
Ah, right.
Don't be me.
Guidance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You be yourself. And the way they tried to do that was like, okay, these are the ways we think. Yeah. These are the ways we try to answer questions, but we end up asking more questions on top of questions. But they don't necessarily say, okay, follow my philosophy. Well, Pythagoras, he kind of did it, but it was a cult, the Pythagorean cult back in the days as well. But Diogenes and Aristotle, Socrates, and all those philosophers, they time and time again they say, "I'm not here to answer your questions. I'm not here to solve your life's problem."
Yeah.
They say my philosophy is not going to solve your life's problem.
Yeah.
They have thought about certain things. And they want to say, okay, I think this is the right. I think this is the right thing to do, and this is the way of doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But they don't say, okay, it should be right for you as well. They don't say that. They don't preach that.
It's shocking. You know what? You sound like a Buddhist. Genuinely. Like I think it's the Dalai Lama spoke about this when people were asking, where can I find Buddha for guidance? Because like you can find Jesus for guidance, or think about what he would have said. And the Dalai Lama said, if you want to know what Buddha thinks, ask yourself, because Buddha was just a normal person.
Exactly.
So
that is one of the beauty of Buddhist religion. It's like Buddha is not specifically one person. And so I come from a place where Buddha was born. Buddha was born in Nepal. And every Nepali person knows Buddha was born in Nepal. We mutter and utter that sentence so many times it's irritating almost. We see every tourist that comes to our country, oh, do you know Buddha was born in Nepal? We go anywhere, oh, do you know Buddha was born in Nepal? When we introduce ourselves, I come from the land of Buddha and land of Mount Everest. There is nothing more to add on to that. That's the most saddest part. Like when people ask, okay, what invention your country did or something like that. Even if there are any inventions, we don't know. We're so careless.
Do you think the Nepalese people should be more aware of Buddhist values?
Well, we should be aware of that, and also like when we talk about Vedas and we talk about different Hindu, it is related to religion because basically our philosophy, the Hindu philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, and Hindu philosophy doesn't necessarily mean Hindu religious philosophy. It means the philosophy that is based on basically our Vedas, and based on there are 9 philosophies within the Eastern philosophy or the Indian subcontinent philosophy, 6 of whom are based on Vedas, and 3 of which are not based on Vedas.
And these are texts, right?
They are
texts.
supposed to be text. Yeah.
Okay.
And Buddhist religion is one of Buddhist thought of philosophy is one of the philosophy that does not believe in Veds and all those things. Yeah. So it comes from that part, and so Buddhist philosophy is very lively. It's very human based. It's very experience. It's based on experience.
Yeah.
They do believe in reincarnation, but there is not much like crazy story going on there. There is not much crazy stuff going on in there, like magical stuff and all like that.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I find very sad is like in our country where we rarely learn about Buddha, and where we rarely learn about the Buddhist philosophy, because we think it is a religion. It is a religion. I'm not trying to discount that it is not a religion. It is a religion, but we don't try to learn anything from it. And then it makes me sad because see, I know about Buddha, but I don't know about any of his philosophy.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to learn a Western philosophy, and the books are in different language, and it is so bloody difficult to understand and read them. While the same things and the topics were discussed thousands of years before they were discussed here.
Well,
I
think it's a good segue to talk about what I discovered recently, because I really wanted to link the Western and Eastern philosophy. And something that I came across that's really interesting is that according to Bimal Krishna Matilal, he's a 20th century Indian philosopher, and he argues that John Stuart Mill, his realization that the laws are not universal and that everything comes from perception and inference, and then we make laws afterwards, was actually an idea that came from a Buddhist philosopher. And this was a guy called Dignaga from around the 500s, and he believed that, he said that perception is the only valid knowledge. So in Matilal's opinion, John Stuart Mill's he changed through living in India because he experienced what he called tradition of logic. I don't quite know what he means by that, but I like the interest of trying to see any external forces coming into that perception that John Stuart Mill created.
When I read that tradition of logic, the first thing that came to my mind is like when we visit a country and we want to paint it as beautifully as we can, we come up with these various words that we can't really describe what's the meaning of it. So tradition of logic, does that mean that the tradition of logic was non-existent in other part of the world?
I think,
or what is it?
I think what this Matilal is implying is that the people in India were atomized already, and that's a conception that he thought he was discovering himself, but it was something commonplace there.
All right. So it's basically like saying, oh, the philosophy that we're discussing now were already discussed 1,000 years ago where I come from.
Yeah, but it might be the language barrier,
Could be.
So it might be a new revelation for a culture or a language group. But but other cultures already had a word for that, feeling or idea.
The question is, can we come up with new thoughts?
I think so, but I think, in my opinion, most of our thoughts are like garbage that have just been
recycled. Basically
recycled. Yeah. Or I found this doing my history dissertation. I would think, wow, that's a brilliant idea. No one's thought of that before. And I'd Google it, and someone's written about it 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, do we have original thinking? Do we have original thoughts? Are there any problems of life that have not been questioned? Well, answered. There are lots of things in life that have not been answered. Philosophy doesn't answer all the questions, and neither does the religion, nor does the science. So there are lots of questions that have not been answered, but have enough questions been raised? Are there any questions left to be raised? Can we thought of one now? Like right now, can we thought of a question that have not been raised ever before? Not related to technology.
I'm always trying to do that, actually.
Any questions?
I'll tell you what, this was actually my genuine question, which might sound crazy.
Yeah.
But I think it's something no one's thought about before.
Okay.
So how will the future of Western or European thought change? And could it come from a non-Western man who's already lived and his experiences of Western culture? Will we create self-perception by looking at people who watched Europe grow?
So it will be just the recycled thought by someone who is not from here, but basically learned everything from here.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think crazy things. If
No,
you haven't realised by now.
Deep. No, that is very, very deep.
Yeah.
Well, that is interesting, because I don't think there is any part of the world where there is internet and computer which has not been touched by Western philosophy or Western ideas.
Yeah.
Of like what freedom should look like, what democracy should look like, basically capitalism should look like.
Yeah.
And what communism should look like.
The thing is, it's our logic of democracy, you know. But what is the outsider's viewpoint of democracy?
Who are the outsiders?
We might be missing crucial pieces of evidence. You know?
I think we are, because I think at the time when we were supposed to ask these questions, we were so involved to talk about, to basically discriminate each other in terms of race, or in terms of the geographical place we come from, and our body structure and all that. I think we forgot to ask them, what do you think about this?
Yeah,
that might have happened as well, because we do see the interviews of the people, the Aboriginal people and the people who live, who are not contacted by other human beings for a long time. They do ask about, what do you think about marriage? What do you think about dowry system? What do you think about this and all that? And they do have their own perspective.
Wow, that's interesting.
And it's very,
they can translate that.
Yes.
Is that North Sentinel Island?
Well, I don't think it's specifically from North Sentinel Island, but there are some of those things you will be able to find online. And it's so grounded, it's so based on the life and the experience, like you said, like the perceived life. It is based on perceived life, what happens in day-to-day life. It's like, see, we can talk about free will as much as we can, but when it comes to real life, okay, what does talking about free will do anything
you know what actually Uswell, you said something quite enlightening, I thought, when we were looking at the sunset out on the balcony over there. You were saying that philosophy is like a language tool that people use to just for communication, really. Yeah. Not for any gains.
Philosophy does not help you make your life better or justify the things you have done in your life. Philosophy just helps you basically have more questions about the questions that you already have. It doesn't bring you answers.
Yeah, I think that's your really good point.
It doesn't bring answers to your life. Like, I know people who want to, these days, Stoicism is all the rage. Like, like doing like this, like that. That's the position of a Stoic, apparently, yeah? You do like this and you say, Marcus Aurelius, I'm reading Marcus Aurelius, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And you're like, this is the quotation that I know. And they will mutter, they will like memorize on one or few quotations, and they'll be like, Marcus Aurelius said this, right? So this I implement this in my business. I'm like, bullshit.
They're not actually, I think we both agree, they're not actually Stoics, because the Stoics they were trying to be reasonable. Whereas a lot of the modern day Stoics take pride in the fact that they're cool, they're unreasonable, they're overly emotional about silly things.
Exactly.
Like normally about women.
Yeah. They're not supposed to be emotional, by the way. They're not supposed to have...
They're not supposed to have little paddies about things and have tantrums,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Marcus Aurelius wrote those meditations at the time where... Like, you can't think of something like that coming to your head, because so much thing that surrounds you is completely different from what is inside you.
Yeah. I'll tell you
I think one major point that people tend to miss out when they read meditations is like, I'm not saying like, okay, I know everything about meditation. Of course, I don't know. I don't claim to be that person. But I think one crucial point that people should actually look into it is meditation is a book that is not written to preach you.
It wasn't for the public.
It's a personal diary.
Yeah.
It's a reflective diary. And
this was and it was a Roman emperor as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he wrote that before or after of an event. So before going to a place, he was like, okay, I want to do this. I want to act like this. This is the right way to act. This is the right things to say. Yeah. And after, like, okay, I did this, but maybe I should not have done that. Maybe this is the right thing to do. Yeah. And what conclusion he had by being in a place or talking with someone.
It's really a unique book in that way, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's like the raw human mind, and what is introspective, what is asking yourself these questions, these personal questions. And it's amazing because he didn't even think about who's going to read this. So
well, it was never meant to be published.
Yeah, it's one of
that
I
is
would
what we
say
hear. But yeah, that is one crucial
of a
point
kind.
people forget. Is like it's a reflective book.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to reflect on your actions and the things you said, the things you did not say, the things you wanted to say, the way you wanted to be, all those kind of things. It's about that, and it's a diary. So basically, it's like you start writing journal today, and you have like different paragraphs of each day. You know, you're not writing like pages, but paragraphs, and that is your meditation. That is meditation by you.
Yeah, and I found for myself.
Sorry. Yeah.
I found for myself. If you write things down, it turns it into like something you can touch, you know. So you can go, wow, this is my brain, you know. And I felt that at that moment because I was thinking something. And yeah, I think it's therapeutic to write stuff down. At least it is for me. Maybe it's not for everyone. Well, I just wanted to add, when you were talking earlier about guidance and how that's really admirable of philosophers. They work as your guidance. I thought what else is admirable is that they were the first to do it. So not only do you need to be reflective, but you also need to come at it with some courage, you know. And I think that's something everyone struggles with. Yeah. But
well, in some cases, even though they might not be the first one to do it, they expanded it in a way that no one else thought it could be expanded.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think we really take that for granted, genuinely. Like, people go, oh yeah, the Socratic method, that's easy. It's just having a new opinion. It's like, yeah, but can you imagine having a new opinion in a society that's never comprehended a new opinion before? Yeah. You know? Well,
when you talk about Socratic, I said this to my friends, like, because we're doing a podcast, and they were like, oh, will you ever have a guest and something like that? And I was like, yeah. And we were also talking about philosophy, and he was like, okay, which philosopher would be the best podcaster? Ooh. And I said, Socrates. Because the way that guy knows how to ask questions is amazing. Like, if you can ask the question, so see, the Socratic method is like not prove someone that you are smarter than them. It's not to prove that. It's just to basically, they have questions, they have certain questions about something, they will ask you, but you ask them question themselves to get the answer out of them.
Okay.
You know, like your true belief, like what you exactly believe in your heart. Like so basically, if we talk about, okay, let's talk about genders and the pronouns and everything. On the surface, everyone will be like, oh, I support it. Because if you say I don't support it these days, you are basically banished from the society. Okay. Yeah? Like, you will have to go and live in a forest or something like that.
Be careful.
Exactly. So you will say that, but he will ask you questions in a way. Doesn't matter if you believe it or not believe it, if you support it or not, because he might know what is the right thing. Either to support or not support, he might know what is the right thing to do, but he will not tell you, okay, oh, you support it, you know what, supporting is not the right thing to do. He will not say that to you. He will say, oh, why do you support it?
Oh, I see. And you might talk yourself out of believing it.
Out of believing it, or making your belief more concrete.
Do you think that's useful?
Very useful.
Yeah.
Very useful. If you're like, I think Socrates should be read by people who are into, like, you know, in high position in the businesses, and the people who want to do like interviews, and people who really want to understand how people are. Like, if you want to understand how your friends are, I don't think going to a pub and chatting about how many girls, like, you know, they have been with, like, or those kind of things, I don't think that helps you become more friends, like more friendly with your friends, because after certain years, they will be somewhere else, you will be somewhere else, and if you don't have that, like, very that kind of sense with your friend, it's like, you know what, it doesn't matter if I don't talk with him or for like a month, if when I call him or when I call her, like when we talk, we instantly click. Yeah. And for that, you need to have had that experience of like talking about the dreams you have, talking about the aspirations you have. And Socratic method, I would not advise people to use that on their friends or something. It's very personal preference. But I think it helps you go deeper into the relationships and everything. Yeah. And Stoic philosophy as well. Yeah. If you are a really good Stoic philosopher, Stoic, like, you know, follower, or like you believe in Stoicism, it helps you in your life immensely. Like, there is one specific idea in Stoicism. It's like, if something is in your control, think about it. But if something is out of your control, don't think about it.
Yeah, I've definitely heard people say it before. That's a really good one.
So when something is happening in your life, let's say you and I have an argument, and I go home, you go home, and I think about, oh, I wish I had said this, I wish I had done this, I wish I had done this in this way, and like, when I think about that as if my thinking will connect to your thinking and will change your mind.
Yeah,
it will not change your mind.
You'll probably get a headache or something.
Exactly. And you will hurt people who are around you, because you will be miserable.
You might be stressed, you know, dwelling.
So the best thing is to do is like, oh, it happened. I don't need to think about it anymore. I can think about what I can do to avoid it next time, or remedy it, or fix it. But there is no point in thinking about the thing that is not in your control, which is your brain. Like, it's not in my control what you think.
I think I had one of these realizations when I was really young, because I learned about like asteroids and hitting into the earth, and then that scared me for a while when I was a kid, and it got to a point I realized being scared of the asteroid doesn't mean the asteroid's not going to come. You know?
Exactly. It's not something we can control, can it? Like thinking about asteroid, or basically talking about it, is not going to make it go away. Unless we make something that will push it away. Like thinking about it's not in our control.
Unless I want to be like a space engineer, or develop anti-asteroid missiles, you know.
And it helps people, like, we all have insecurities, and when you think your insecurities from this perspective, it helps you immensely. It's like, well, there are certain things in my body that I can't control. Like, it doesn't matter how many workouts I do, I'm not going to be 6 foot tall, am I? I'm not.
Me neither.
Like, it doesn't matter how many pull-ups I do, I'm not going to be tall. So and that is insecurities that many people have, like not being tall enough, because we get validation from other people if you're tall, like, you know, that kind of people treat you differently.
There is tall privilege, I would say.
Tall privilege, pretty privilege, all those things, they exist, but people don't want to basically agree it exists. And because not all people are pretty and not all people are tall as well, so that's the reason. And so in that sense, it's like, it's not in my control. What's the point of me thinking about it? But what I can control is my diet. I can control my diet. I can control the exercises that I do. I can make my life longer than it would be otherwise. I can control smoking or not smoking, and those kind of things.
I think if you think you can control those things, you're on a pathway to like self-hatred and really cynical, and like I don't want to go too deep into it, but like, for example, Hitler believed he could make a generation that's tall and perfect and looks great. He believed he could do that, but you try and do that by force, it's not going to end well. You can't get rid of the problems.
No, it's a very...
You have to accept them. Really.
Yeah, like flaws. I don't know who made flaw to be a negative thing.
Why is flaw a flaw?
Well, exactly. Flaws should be something that is basically celebrated, because it's a unique trait that you have. It's not everything that everyone has. And we have stopped, like, you know, celebrating someone's uniqueness. We want everyone to normal. Everyone have same hairstyle. The people say, oh, Kim Jong-un makes everyone have same hairstyle. I'll go into the streets and see the, like, lads. So many people have this hairstyle or that hairstyle.
I saw lots of guys, young, like 15-year-olds, and they're all wearing basically the same outfit.
Same outfit.
And you know what? I noticed the young people nowadays, I say nowadays, I'm only 23, they were walking so slowly. I don't know if they were delinquents or something. Anyway, this is me going on a tangent.
Oh, yeah, we hate young people, that's it?
Yeah, that's it, sorry.
Well, we're not that old either. All right, okay, let's get into talking about John Stuart Mill. Well, you briefly introduce him. The one thing that I want to talk about him is the harm principle.
Okay.
The harm principle from John Stuart Mill. So Mill's harm principle asserts that only legitimate reason for the society or the state to restrict individual freedom is to prevent direct harm to others. Harm here is understood as a physical or psychological damage, not mere offense, which does not justify coercion in Mill's view. So coercion is not an harm. Is that what he's saying?
So coercion is when you try to stop something from happening, right?
Yeah, it's like the societal coercion. Basically, an offense does not justify. If you offend someone, that doesn't mean the state or the society has right to coerce you into stopping it.
Well, unless you live in Canada. Sorry.
Oh, hello, Mr. Jordan Peterson. All right.
Hello, Justin Trudeau.
However, today's society increasingly uses coercion in cases of offenses, which raises concerns about overreach. So basically these days, like we talked about if you mispronounce someone, or if you misgendered someone, there is a probability you'll lose your job. Yeah. And in that whole situation, it's an institution that was involved that took your right away to offend someone.
Yeah.
Or it might not be offensive, because sometimes you don't even know. Like sometimes we don't know what the pronoun of someone is in order to call that person with the pronoun that they believe is supposed to be theirs. Yeah, because there are so many of them, one thing, and the other thing is that we can't really tell. Like these days we can't see a person and make judgment on their gender.
Yeah,
that has gone away. That is far beyond us. So it's very difficult.
Well,
so
I have something funny to say. I was going to say, back in the old days, the only people who were misgendered were when gay people were having an argument. They would go, "She's been doing this. She's been doing." They would do that for like guys, you know. Anyway,
good old days.
Bit of a tangent.
But today we see increasing pressure from both state and social institutions to regulate behaviors that causes offenses, such as misgendering or body shaming. Mill's philosophy, however, only justifies interference when actual harm is involved, not mere offense. So example for this that you can take is like, you can burn a flag of a country in front of the parliament. Like, as long as you're not in the parliament, or as long as you don't throw the burnt flag into someone's body, you have not caused harm to anybody. So in this sense, what Mill says is like, the state, the police is not, they don't have right to intervene and coerce you into stop from what you're doing.
Yeah.
As long as you're not throwing that burnt flag to someone, or as long as you're not burning that flag in a place where you're not supposed to burn. Yeah. So that is what he says. But Mill's philosophy, however, only justifies the interference when actual harm is involved. So, but what is harm? So we need to be very clear about defining what is harm, because offensive things can also cause you harm.
I think it's obvious what physical harm is. So we can put that to one side. We'll
but
say
psychological harm.
Psychological harm.
Yeah.
There are. Okay, so burning the flag, for example.
Yeah.
Is that okay? What do you think? Is that okay?
Well, I mean, no.
No.
It's a flag. Well,
but I wouldn't care if someone decided to burn the Union Jack outside the hospital. I don't care. Yeah. Actually,
why?
Well, actually, can I give an example of this actually happening? So in Sweden, a couple of years ago, this guy wanted to burn the Bible in public, and he was from a different religious background. We won't say which background. He wanted to burn the Bible in public. The Swedish authorities said, "Yeah, go ahead." And they said, "Here it is. Here, there's a space right here. Go and burn the book." He didn't burn the book in the end.
Well, I think they were trying to show how basically, what's the word? Basically, how like appreciative they are, or something like that. Like how no, what's the word? Where you basically let people do whatever the hell they want to do.
I don't think it's tolerance.
Do you not?
No.
Yeah, that's the word, tolerance.
I don't think so. I think they genuinely don't care.
But I think the image they were trying to portray is that they're tolerant. Like trying to portray to that person whose country he had to immigrate from, to those people in that country. Look, in this country I can do this, but I couldn't do this in the country that I was in. And I'm in this country and I'm burning their book, not my book. But
the thing is, though, is that Sweden's not very Christian nowadays, and the Christianity that did exist was what's the word? Reformist. So they don't actually value the paper, the physical form. They have their values.
Yeah, now we dig more deeper into it, then we get another inference out of it as well. Well, yeah, but the answer to Mill's harm principle is the offense principle, which basically says that causing offense itself grounds for social punishment, and that complicates the Mill's framework. So this principle allows for coercion even when no real harm is caused. But this leads to complex questions. It's like, what constitutes legitimate offense? It's like, but there is a very sensitive topic that we're not allowed to talk in YouTube. That is basically, I think the word is unliving yourself. Making yourself unlive. Yeah, that is how we say it these days. So
what does that mean? Like?
Oh, no, we can't say the word.
Passing.
Yeah, like unliving yourself. You're unliving yourself.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing.
I understand.
Yeah. So basically, in that sense, it's like, okay, you are hurt. In that situation, you are hurting yourself. So the harm is being caused to yourself. Is the state or the society or the institutions, do they have right to stop it?
It's a crime.
Because Mill
in
would
this
say
country,
no.
It's a crime.
Mill would say no.
So that's something.
Because you're not hurting anyone.
Yeah.
So that's why there are problems in this harm principle and offense principle. The problem with offense principle is basically that, okay, where do we draw the line of what is offensive and what is not offensive?
Okay.
Something that is offensive to you is not offensive to me.
Okay, so that's harm principle.
No, harm principle is basically saying,
it's like neglect.
As long as I'm not hurting anyone, I can do whatever the hell I want. And, well, yeah, as long as I'm not hurting anyone, I can do whatever the hell I want, and the government or the state can't stop me.
Yeah.
it's a very narrow-minded opinion
It is
from
quite
me.
narrow because it leaves.
It is narrow-minded from me as well, but in itself, it's very straightforward. But when you look deeper into it, it has various ways of interpretation. You can interpret it in many
I think
ways.
there's a lot of room for self-neglect, I would say. Like, I don't like this idea that it's okay to do what you want if it's on your own and it doesn't hurt people.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize that you're hurting yourself, you know? Like, you might be watching, like, some indoctrination video. Like, you might join a cult, you know?
Yeah, but you will do the harming after that. So when you're starting to do harm, maybe they can intervene. Yeah.
Being left on your own. I'm not saying everyone should watch you, but I'm saying people should care about what you're doing. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it talks about freedom. So, like, where does our freedom start and where does it end? So those are the things. So, like we have said a couple of times in this podcast today, is like philosophies, whether Mills or others, are not intended to provide definitive answer to every moral dilemma. Instead, they offer frameworks to help us critically assess the situation. In the end, no single philosophy can dictate how we should act in every scenario. The complexity of life means that philosophers' role is often to help us ask better questions rather than provide with definitive answers. So philosophy is something that we learn and can learn, and it doesn't have to be from a book that you can understand or cannot understand, because there are many philosophical books which are so difficult to understand.
And to be honest, like, there's the world of YouTube nowadays.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to get media. You know?
To understand philosophy. And you can learn philosophy from your life. Your life story, the things you believe in it themselves can be philosophy. It might not be famous philosophy because you might not be writing books.
Well, I suppose like the asteroid I mentioned, you know, the fear of that. That's like an anecdote, you know. Yeah. Maybe personal philosophy. It
can be, well, you did help get rid of that emotional stress that you're in using Stoic philosophy. But you didn't know at the time that was Stoic, that comes under Stoicism, you know. Yeah. There are many things that are already established, which now we are going into that topic, the problem topic, and which helps you answer which helps you try to basically come in terms with the problems that you have, or come in terms with the questions that you have about life or about everything, but it will not necessarily give you an answer. So it is very difficult to find answers in your life situation in philosophy. So it's a way of living, but philosophy is a way of living. It's a way of living for a mental state rather than your proper way of living. I see. Because when you are philosophical, I think what I believe is like philosophical people, they have two lives. One is the philosophical life that they live, which they can't always show to other people, which they can't always implement in real life, and the other one is like the real life that they have. Okay. Yeah. So Nietzsche can't go around everywhere saying, okay, there was a god, but we killed it. We killed the god. Like, you know, those kind of things. It's like you can't go around and believing on one specific thing. There will come a certain point where you can't take your life any further. Like you can't go any further without abandoning that and basically not believing on anything, basically. So yeah, if you
think it's like evolutionary? Because if you were like dedicated to a spirituality or a religion, you might follow your life by this book, you know, whereas your personal philosophy might be evolving, you know. That might not take you further, so you have to substitute that idea, give yourself a new idea, and then hopefully you can bring it into the real world. Yeah, maybe.
But I think it's very sad that we read one book or we read one philosophy, we listen to one person, and we base our entire morality and our entire thought process on that person's belief. It's like so many people think Jordan Peterson has answer to everything that they can possibly ask. He might have answers to them from his experience and his way of, like, you know, living his life, the way he lived his life. Yeah. But he's not like, you should not try to copy his life, because your life is gone in vain. Yeah. You're reading a book and following that book, meaning you're leaving someone else's life. You're not living your life.
Interesting.
But
you might need them for guidance. Like, there might be someone in your life who's not actually saying those things, and then you find a book and this person says those things, and you think, wow, that's like someone who could support me, you know?
Well, yeah, and also you have to critically think before doing that. It's like, oh, is the things that they're saying, it feels like I believe with it, but do I truly believe on it? And what are the biases that I have inherently? Yeah. Or what are the biases that I've had from listening to other people, talking with other people?
This is why it's good to be critical, I think, because
you have to. That is what philosophy teaches you, to be critical.
Because you read a book and you just find the bits that you can take, and then you don't have to agree with all of it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it should be more easier than it is, you know?
I think it is easier. It's just, and also the one thing that I want to add quickly before going to our problem topic is basically there are many Indian philosophers. There are many the philosophers that come from the Indian subcontinent. But the problem we have is like they are worshipped, and when they are worshipped, their philosophy goes away and it gets taken over by like the certain things that they say, and people try to like basically dress like them, be like them, like, you know, go and do the meditations in their like what is it called? There is a word for a specifically word where people are allowed to go freely and be there, and people do that. And like, for example, Osho is one of the he's very great modern philosopher from India, but people who follow him, it's like a cult.
Yeah.
You know, it's like for them there is nothing else other than Osho and what he believed in, and all things that other than what he preached in, and that is very close-minded.
Also, I think they're not making their own personality.
No.
Yeah.
And Osho himself, he learned Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy. He was a person who, born in India, wrote a book on Taoism, man, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
That's impressive. I mean, is he that bad to look up to, though?
No, he is really good. What I'm saying is, like, you should not imitate anyone. That's the whole point of his philosophy. That is what he was preaching as well. That is what he was teaching as well. Yeah. But the culture that we come from, in our Hindi philosophy or the Indian subcontinent philosophy, everything is very spiritual philosophy as well. It's not like only materialistic philosophy like we see in other part of the world. It's spiritual, and like in other part of the world where it is connected to Christianity, it is connected to Hinduism, and it is connected to Hinduism very, very heavily because of the language as well, like the Sanskrit language. In the Western, there were different languages. You could write it in them, and then it was easier for you to get it away from the spirituality of the religion, you know, because the language was different, and all those kind of things. Like, not all philosophers wrote in Hebrew, or not, they didn't write it in Latin language. They wrote it in different languages. And for Sanskrit, the philosophers who wrote in Sanskrit and who read Sanskrit, they were always like a religious inference in there. The spirituality was there, and the people who lived in that part of the world, they are very spiritual people as well. Like, they might not believe in God, but they believe in His Spirit. They might not believe in reincarnation, but they believe that there is something that is higher than. Do
you think that's because it's been reinforced for so many centuries and generations?
Rather than reinforced, it has been taught for so many centuries and generations. And also because we didn't write, people think like, oh, we might not have any philosophers or something. But the first philosopher, the Western philosopher, Thales, I think it was like 500 BC or something like that, or 1500 BC. I don't know the exact time. The philosopher there was already very established philosophical ideas going on in India at that time, in Indian subcontinent at that time.
So where would this be? Like Syria, Iraq?
Well, Indus Valley civilization is what they say. Indus Valley, and South India as well. It comes from that. It comes from like North India, as you can say. Like Siddhartha Gautama, he was born in Nepal basically, but he got enlightenment in India. So that's the thing that our problem.
Some of these names actually translate, and I think India had them first. Like, I can't think of.
There is a word called Mithya. So Mithya is there is a philosopher in India. I forgot his name. Basically in Hindi tradition, his name is Charvaka. So he basically said, well, this world is Mithya. So Mithya doesn't mean myth or mythical. It has similar meaning, but not exactly that meaning. I don't know how to translate it exactly. But it basically means, well, it basically is like nihilism. It's like, okay, there is no reason. Like, there is nothing to this world. You know, you live your life as well as you can. And there is a Sanskrit quotation that he says, like, I don't know exactly how it goes, but I can translate it in English. He says, drink until you fall to the ground, get up, drink again, because we don't know if you will get reborn again or not.
Interesting.
And so for young people, for like, it's such a cool thing, isn't it? Like drink and all that. He's talking about alcohol and all those kind of things. And we only learn that from him. We don't learn other things from him, and that's the problem. And that's why Charvaka, he is not seen as one of the best philosophers or something like that, but the questions he asked were so deep. The things he discussed were so deep, and the question he tried to answer were so deep, and we forget that because we only we get hyped and we get happy, like, okay, drink until you fall into the ground, get up and drink again, because we don't know if you're gonna get reborn or not.
So I guess that might be where the idols start, where people want to start imitating, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just on the surface, I think. It's just at the top.
Like Osho, he was such a revolutionary person. He like had this very different life than all the many people in India have. And so that is something you can look up to. And also he was very, very, very educated, like highly, highly educated person.
What's this guy's name?
Osho. If you just look OSO. Yeah,
okay.
I think OASO or something, yeah.
Yeah.
And but then because of the cult kind of image that came out of it, and there were all the controversies that also came from his ashrams that he had. There is a bit of controversy in there as well, but I don't want to go into it. Now, finally, we're going to talk about the problem, the scenario that I put, so that can be solved through different philosophical ideas.
This is Ujwal's trolley. What's it called? Trolley.
It's a trolley problem, but
Ujwal's trolley problem.
But it's not exactly trolley problem. It's a bit sophisticated, I would say, from that. So basically, I was listening to.
There's not a train.
No, there's not a train at all.
But the people are like the train.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, I was listening to a philosophy lecture from Duke University. I don't know the name of the person. I'm really sorry about that. And he talks about the same problem. And I was like, whoa, this is interesting, because I couldn't really come up with the problem as well, because I'm not very smart. And so the problem is
smart.
So imagine a scenario in remote Polish village during Nazi invasion. The village has 3 soldiers who killed Nazi soldiers. Now, the Nazi have gathered all the villagers in the town square and chosen a guy from the village to either shoot 3 guys who shot the Nazis, or the Nazi will kill all of them. Like all the villagers. 1,000 people. So now this is what the philosophy, the people who have different philosophical opinions or beliefs would do. So Stoicism.
Yeah.
So theme of Stoicism is virtue is the only true good, and one must remain calm and rational in the face of adversity. Yeah. So that is what Stoics basically believe in. It's a kind of stereotypical, but I mean it rational, is very true as well.
That's difficult though.
Yeah. So a Stoic, while taking decision, would focus on virtue and moral duty over emotional reaction or external outcomes. They might refuse to kill the 3 men, believing that participating in the murder of innocent people is violation of virtue.
Do you think that's the rational answer, is to refuse participation?
Well, it depends if you're a Stoic. It is for you. Yeah. So regardless of the consequences, yeah. And the focus would be on acting in line with moral integrity, even in the face of death. So reasoning is virtue is paramount, and the Stoic might argue that killing to save others compromises their moral character. So it's better to suffer injustice than to commit injustice.
But could a Stoic not also argue that their moral character will be compromised if they don't kill 3, because the rest of them will be killed?
That's the problem.
Okay.
That's the problem.
So we don't know what the Stoic would answer.
Well, more likely, because Stoicism is so based on your moral character, even killing those 3 people means you compromised your moral character. But if everyone suffers the injustice, it's not onto you though, is it? Because it was the injustice committed by other people. So that can be it.
Interesting.
Now we go to libertarianism. I hope that's the right way to pronounce.
Libertarianism.
Libertarianism. So individual freedom and autonomy are the highest values, and coercion is injustice. That's the theme of libertarianism.
Freedom and autonomy.
Yes. So the decision would be a libertarian would argue that a villager has no moral obligation to sacrifice 3 men, as Nazis are inciting force and coercion. The villagers should not violate autonomy of 3 men, as their lives should not be sacrificed based on threats from an immoral regime. So libertarians reject coercion, forcing the villagers to kill violates their autonomy, and they would argue that it is Nazis who are responsible for the evil, not the villagers.
Yeah, and I made a red note
saying
again.
It is similar to Stoicism.
Is it similar to Stoics?
Well, libertarian is like everyone has their own right, isn't it? Everyone, you are responsible for the decision you make.
Yeah. So, could you say Stoics are kind of liberal?
Yeah. In a sense, they are, because you are trying to preserve your moral character, basically. And in libertarian, they are also thinking about from their perspective.
But what's different then?
It's basically that, well, they reject coercion first, and basically forcing the villager to kill violates their autonomy. So basically it violates villagers and the autonomy of those 3 people.
Okay.
But and now they can say, oh, it's the Nazi who are responsible for the evil, not the villagers.
Yeah.
So even if the guy were to kill 3 people, other villagers might look at it in a way that, okay, it's the Nazi who made him kill, it's not he who killed. So in that sense also it's libertarian. So a libertarian might pull the trigger and kill 3 people, or might not do it as well.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Now we go into, we have already talked about nihilism. We'll go into utilitarianism.
Yeah.
So utilitarianism, many people might have heard about this, is the right action that is that which maximizes overall happiness and minimizes suffering.
It's
so
probably
very
the most popular. It's probably the most popular
decision, and it's very straightforward as well. So a utilitarian would likely argue that villagers should kill 3 soldiers in order to save the entire village, as this would result in the least overall suffering and maximize the happiness of the majority.
However, you're playing a wager with Nazis. You know, the idea that they've given you a choice in the first place doesn't mean they're fair people.
Yeah, they might kill all the people at the end.
You don't know what's going to happen.
This is very narrow view of what we're looking at the situation. The situation is, if you kill those 3 people, the 1,000 people will live. We don't have any other things going on in there. But in the real scenario, that was not the case. In the real scenario, that was not the case. And after this, we go to Kantian ethics. So Kantian ethics comes from Kant. So the theme of the Kantian ethics is moral actions are determined by duty, and people must never be used as a means to an end. So universal moral laws should be respected. So a Kantian would likely to refuse 3 soldiers, as this would violate the categorical imperative not to treat others merely as a means to an end. So killing people is means to an end to save 1,000 people. The villager would be morally obligated to respect intrinsic dignity and rights of the 3 men, even if Nazis threaten collective punishment. So the reasoning is that the killing the 3 men would violate the Kantian principle of respecting human dignity, and the villager would be morally obligated to refrain from treating others as tools to prevent further harm.
Oh wow!
So you can't. So basically, you can't use those 3 men.
Is it like the opposite of utilization?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
It can be opposite of utilitarianism. Yes.
Yeah.
You're not looking for the maximum outcome of the least the maximum happiness outcome or something like that. What you're looking for is basically, it's the same law that should be applied to everybody, and it should be respected.
Yeah. So maybe they would be like the most likely to get shot, I would say. I think they would be the most likely to get straight up shot by they would stand up very defiant. Yeah. And the Nazis would shoot them.
Yeah.
I think
they would be most likely to suffer basically in the situation.
Yeah.
But if everyone believes in Kantian principle, you are not violating human dignity.
I feel like if the whole society was like Kant, maybe they would never be. This might be controversial. They would never be victims of those things because they would just have such a strong
Well, there are certain things that Kant says which are not very.
Okay.
You can't really accept them with the face value that you get.
Right.
But
what I mean is it seems confrontational. That's what I mean.
Oh yeah. Basically. Yeah. So basically, this reasoning that killing 3 men would violate the Kantian principle of respecting human dignity, and the villager would be morally obligated to refrain from treating others as tools. Like basically, you can't use other people as tools to meet your end means. As a means to meet your end goal, you can't use them as that. So this basically makes you think, okay, if I can't do that, what can I do? Because I don't want to use someone to achieve something. I don't want to use some human. This also goes to describe how capitalism is a bit evil. Is that you're using human beings to get one outcome, to reach your mean. But you should not be doing that. You should be treating them fairly.
Different door that we could walk through.
And so Hegelian philosophy, which comes from Hegel. The Hegelian philosophy, the theme of the Hegelian philosophy is the dialectical process and the evolution of spirit through history. So basically, he says, everything has historical biasness, or everything has historical effect. So from a Hegelian perspective, the villager might see this situation as a part of larger historical struggle. While personal ethics are important, Hegel emphasizes that development of ethical life, I can't pronounce the word, which is in German. Yeah, an unfolding of history. The villager might act based on broader understanding of how this action fits into the grand historical process. So Hegel would see the situation as a moment in the dialectical process of history. The villager's decision might be influenced by the broader scale or historical context, and they might consider the role of their action in the evolution of the community and national spirit. So basically saying, if in the historical situation there might have been people who sacrificed their life to save others, if that happened and you are aware of that history, you might do the same thing. Like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice these 3 people because I want to this.
But then you might also be aware that historically people do nothing, you know.
Yeah, and if you're aware of that, they might do nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you are very influenced by history. And the other one is Socratic philosophy.
Yeah.
So the main philosophy of Socrates is the unexamined life is not worth living. Moral reasoning and virtue are paramount, basically. Yeah. So a Socratic approach.
I can't imagine Socrates in this situation. He would definitely get shot in the face by the Nazis.
Oh yeah. Well, I like my Socrates.
Yeah.
So a Socratic approach would be to encourage villagers to seek the most morally justified course of action through reason and dialogue. Killing the 3 soldiers would likely to be rejected because Socrates believed that it is better to suffer wrong than to commit it. We can see that from, if you read the book, Last Days of Socrates, you can see that in that book as well. Because he knows it was wrong for him to convict of the things that he was convicted, like basically polluting the youth's mind in Athens at that day and age. He knew it was wrong. And he knew when he was being basically given the punishment to drink hemlock and die. He knew it was wrong. And he had chances to leave the country, go away, but he didn't do it. So because, he believed that, And Socrates might argue that it is always wrong to commit an injustice, even under duress. The villager would engage in deep reflection, likely concluding that they would not kill the 3 soldiers, as doing so would corrupt their own soul.
They would probably convince the Nazis to stop doing what they're doing as well.
Yeah, if they were really good in talking, then why not? So, but we don't know. That was a very different scenario. Yeah. So Aristotelian ethics. So which is the Aristotle's philosophy. So virtue lies in finding the golden mean and achieving eudaimonia, which is flourishing. An Aristotelian would consider what a virtuous person would do in this situation. They might aim for a balanced action that considers both justice and practical wisdom. Depending on a specific context, they may find the saving the village by killing 3 men could be pragmatic, though tragic, expression of courage and justice. So an Aristotelian person would actually kill those 3 men and save the 1,000 people. Yeah. Now comes the Platonic philosophy, which is based on the philosophy of Plato.
Is it just these 2 left?
We have Taoism and Confucianism.
Okay,
as well.
so it's Plato.
I think those 2 are a bit important than this as well. So the Plato theme of the Platonic philosophy is the pursuit of justice and the ideal of good, which you can see in the book, the Republican, the Republic. Yeah, the Plato's Republic. Yeah. So Plato's concept of injustice involves aligning with ideal forms. A Platonic might argue that villagers should act in accordance with the highest moral principle, rejecting the Nazis' unjust demand, refusing to kill the 3 men. Plato would emphasize the importance of justice even in the face of practical consequences. Platonic thought emphasizes eternal truths and justice as part of the ideal realm. The villager would likely to refuse to kill 3 men, believing that justice cannot be compromised even in extreme circumstances.
So it's about justice there.
Yeah. Sorry to everyone who might be finding
some
this
of them sound quite similar. Yeah. I definitely say
they are similar.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of dignified. Yeah. Like they're saying, I won't do it because of this belief. Yeah. You know, one belief is justice. One belief is
what's the good for the mass.
Exactly.
One believes what is good for the moral.
It seems to be one core belief though. Right?
Oh yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. Every philosopher has many philosophers. They have one core belief. And that is what makes them interesting to read as well, because they explore that belief in so many different ways that you can actually, actually find answers, even though they don't give you exactly answers.
I guess.
And the problem with people who these days think, the speakers that we have, I don't want to name names because I do appreciate the guy, yeah. But they ask him question about everything, about, what do you think about Israel-Palestine? Oh, what do you think about Ukraine-Russia? Oh, and what do you think about gender? Okay, what do you think about, Hegel? What do you think about communism, capitalism?
Yeah.
My goodness. Let that guy speak for the thing that he's, really profoundly intellectual on, not on everything. And that's how you make him villain. Because not everyone has belief that is completely aligned with your belief,
Yeah.
or
And then
completely
you might
aligned
make
with the
you
belief
might
of
make
the
him,
masses.
you make him look weak as well. That's
Yeah, like human beings are not perfect.
Mm.
Yeah, we have very, very horrible beliefs within ourselves. Yeah, everyone has. I have some very horrible beliefs. I think some people have very horrible beliefs as well. I'm not shy in recognizing that I have them, because I don't have enough knowledge or enough information to not have them. I don't even know the beliefs that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and when those kind of people are put on pressure, and they also like talking about this because they make a lot of money, and they are put into pressure and they are asked questions. It's like, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And they go into random tangent to find answers, and then you realize, oh, this person is just shit. He's just another random person. He just happened to know a lot about one specific topic, and they try to go towards the direction what their audience is listening to, like go from being very scientific to religious now, because everyone seems that there should be the Christian leader is not existent in the Western world, so they should have one, something like that. And that's the theme that is going on with certain people that we used to look up to. And even though there were so many fallacies, we did look up to that person, but we cannot anymore. It's like asking Stephen Fry has knowledge about so many things. Like he knows about drama, about philosophy, about Greek mythology and all those kind of things. He knows about that. It's like going to him and asking, oh, what do you think about the action of Japan in China? It's like, why? Why are you asking him that?
Yeah, it's definitely. People should consider why, and this is why journalism gets a bad rap. And there are a lot of bad journalists because they want to find some dirt, basically.
Exactly.
They want you to say something that sounds weak or something that sounds rude,
controversial, so that people will click on it. Yeah,
but you just might not have an opinion on that. You've not had time to think. You've not had time to consider, and they won't give you time. They'll go, "No, give me an answer." You know.
Yeah. So it's very forceful. All right, let's go into Taoism, and we have one more. And so Taoism is the harmony with Tao, the way, the natural flow.
This is the yin and the yang.
Yeah, right. Wu wei, and the simplicity. So
is that what they call it in Nepalese? Wu wei.
I don't think. I'm not really sure.
It's probably Chinese.
Yeah,
right? Wu wei.
A Taoist might resist the urge to forcefully intervene, preferring to act in harmony with the natural course of events rather than making a deliberate choice to kill or save. Taoism advocates following the flow of life and not overburdening oneself with the rigid moral rules, which could suggest allowing events to unfold without directly participating in the killing. So a Taoist approach emphasizes the natural balance of the universe. A Taoist might argue that interfering with the balance, such as by killing others, creates further disharmony. They might suggest that the villagers should avoid forceful actions and trust the flow of situation, even if it leads to tragedy. So
it reminds me of naturalism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's they have similarities. Yeah, a lot. So Confucianism, which is the last one, social harmony, filial piety, moral virtue, they are rooted in fulfilling one's role within the community and respecting relationships. It's kind of Stoic as well, Confucianism. So Confucianism emphasizes duty to others, especially in maintaining social harmony and acting with benevolence. A Confucian might likely be deeply conflicted, but they might lean towards sacrificing the three men to save the broader community. This would protect the greater social structure and relationships that Confucian ethics prioritize.
Yeah.
So that is what a Confucian was.
It's definitely, when I hear Confucian, I think of the rule of law and how to maintain order and harmony, basically. Yeah.
So yeah, we went through 11 different school of thoughts.
Yeah.
And none of they were similar in many cases, but they were very different as well. But none of them gave concrete answer, did they?
No.
Apart from utilitarianism or nihilism.
Maybe Taoism.
Taoism is same, just let it be. And so that's the thing with philosophy. Is like one philosophy or one philosopher's idea is not going to solve all the problem you have. I know I've been repeating this again and again, but that's the whole thing. It's like philosophy is not answer to questions that you have about life or the problems and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Philosophy is just the school of thought. It's just the way of thinking differently.
And I guess you might favour some of these schools of thought.
Oh, definitely,
Depending on your personality, you might go, oh, I'm a bit like that.
Which one would you favour?
Which one do I think I'm like? That should be a question.
Yes.
Let's see them again. All right.
Well, I think we'll have to say now because we don't have a lot of time.
I just want to find what was it? The first one.
Oh, no, let me
Okay.
do it for you.
Right.
Stoicism.
Maybe the Stoicism, or there was maybe the Hegel.
Hegelian?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the Hegel? Did we cover that?
Yes, we did.
Where is it?
It should be before.
There it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, as someone who studied history, I definitely relate to Hegel's solution, and I think it comes with a very judgmental attitude, and I recognise that within myself, that maybe I'm thinking too ridiculously in big terms. You know, there's not enough time for me to fully consider it if I take Hegel's approach.
Well, I think it's easy as well taking Hegel's approach, because you know what has happened in the history, and if you repeat the same thing, you might not like it. It might be basically the best.
But there's also zero answer. You know, to that situation, there's zero answer.
There is no concrete answer.
Yeah.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us until today. We're going to do 0 hour thoughts now. I have one ready. Do you have one ready, Jamie? Any 0 hour
you
thoughts
go.
that
You
have
go
today?
with yours. I'll see if I can.
Yeah, mine is quite long and it's very directive. So I'm really sorry to all the people who might get hurt by listening to it. But I think it's important for people to listen. It's not because I'm saying it. It's because I think it's important. All right. 0 hour thoughts. The topic is jack of all trades. Most of us never become best at anything. We're often the jack of all trades, but master of none. We dabble into different things, maybe even get good at few, but rarely push ourselves to the point of mastery. Why? We start something, maybe we get better at it as we improve. We begin to compare ourselves with others around us, and once we feel we have surpassed them, whether physically or in our own imagination, we stop striving. The whole drive to get better wasn't about genuine mastery, it was about being better than others around us. And when that ego whispers, you're better than the people around you, we hit the brakes and we stop pushing. The culture of self-congratulation, the idea that every little win you need to treat yourself is pure nonsense. Do you think that that's how greatness is achieved? Did Lewis Hamilton become the greatest Formula One driver by treating himself after every race? Did Ronaldo stop and pat himself on the back after scoring one goal or winning one match? Of course he didn't. Hamilton did not stop when he won a race by just a second. Ronaldo did not get complacent because his team drew the match against the Barcelona. They did not let their ego or temporary satisfaction dictate their process. They weren't in it for small victories or fleeting praise. They were in it to become the best, to choose greatness relentlessly. So why are you stopping now? Are you really the best you could ever be? Are you the best that can ever be? Why are you stopping? Let's not be jack of all trades. Let's master something.
I like it. It's very motivational. Definitely. Master something. Find something, yeah. Definitely.
Find something.
It's great. I have no 0 hour thought, but we could use this minute to explain your thing if we want to. Yeah.
So basically, I consider myself a jack of few trades, but master of none. So this is very reflective, this one, for me.
I found it personally reflective too, actually.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think it's important for us to, because every person who has been successful in their life was because they were crazy at one stuff, one thing, one specific.
They were
thing.
dedicated.
Yeah. Not because they. I know, I want to learn about philosophy. I want to learn my cybersecurity stuff. I want to do that as well. Yeah. And I'm interested in politics. I'm interested in so many other things. Yeah. I want to travel the world. I want to, basically do this, do that, and do that. But what will I really achieve?
Yeah.
What will I really achieve?
Yeah.
By being focused on so many things, nothing at the end. So I think it's time. Otherwise, it will be late.
I was just saying, this reminds me of what we're looking at, the philosophers. They had that one core thing. So what was it? The one was about justice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that was that belief system. So maybe like a core belief could be one of those things. We need to find something that we can hold on to and grab it so hard that we can pull ourselves and get up there. And then we start walking from there. Because, when people say, you need to climb these stairs, the ladders, of your career and all that. And I believe many of us we're not even in the first step. We're still hanging from it. I do have a 0 hour thought now that I think about it. I've probably said this one before, but I love this one because I think everyone can listen to it and take something from it. People tell you to aim high, right? People always say, aim for the stars, reach your potential, go higher. people tell you to aim high. People never tell you to aim low enough, because you have to start from the beginning. You know, for example, someone who lost their ability to walk after an accident, you know, they have to learn to walk. But if they just sit there and think, I'm never going to run, they won't start walking.
Exactly.
So
that is very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I hope it was not my intention to make it a lecture podcast today, but I think it became like that because we are also very confused as to what to do next and about philosophy. Basically, we will come at this topic again. We will do other podcast on philosophy, me and you, or we'll have some guest and we'll talk on that topic. It's like one of my dream is to get Slovak Zizek on the podcast and ask him, can you please describe your philosophy in one sentence, or can you please describe how we can understand Hegel, how we can understand Kant, basically even communism, like please explain us in a way that we young people of this day and age would understand it, because
I'd like to meet these people. Maybe you and I should go to like one of these talks in London.
Yes, and try.
They do them, don't they? Like a big theatre.
I think it's important that they make it accessible for us young people, because a lot of us, we're not going to read books. I'm sorry, but we are not going to. There are many of us who are not going to read books, because the way it has changed. The digital world has changed how we learn.
Books are a bit slow. They've always been slow, but the world used to be even slower. So books were like, wow, this is instant. But we don't want to read, really. Yeah.
Well, we will read books and we'll do that because we don't have any other choice. But I would rather people ask our great intellectual authorities the questions that they can answer, the questions that they are supposed to answer, the questions that, you know, is within their realm. It's not outside their realm. We're not asking them something that, like, you know, is completely out of their scope. Yeah. Hopefully one day.
That's a good goal. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll do it.
And
thank you, everybody.
If we don't see you next time, good night, good afternoon, good evening, good afternoon, and good night. Oh, sorry, I fucked it up. Anyway, bye.
Good night.
Good night.